Hi, Jamie.
Hi, good morning.
Lovely to see you. And very excited today because I had the privilege and pleasure to see you more than once this week. You met with me on Thursday when we delivered a session to a group of speech and language therapists in London. And I didn't record that session, which I'm now kicking myself for. So I'm hoping that we can have a slightly different, sort of attuned kind of version of that fabulous session that you very kindly came in on Thursday afternoon. So I hope that's okay.
Yes, and it sounds kind of fun. I popped into a conference in London for a wee chat, and I just stopped in London for 20, 25 minutes, and then went on my way. Modern telecommunications are amazing in that way that, I can be sitting in California and it's, 6 in the morning, and you and your colleagues are in London, and, it's towards the end of the day, and it's like, oh, by the way, here's Jamie. I'm like, what the hell, off you go.
And it was truly inspirational as always. And I think what more than just inspirational, I felt like it gave context, it gave um, all the aspects of how we support our GLPs, like in terms of thinking about the ecology. You gave the room that we were in physically the ecology for setting the scene for understanding a Gestalt processor, a Gestalt language processor, who can so eloquently describe those feelings, those thoughts, the much more entirety of it. And we talked a lot about child-led play and how we set up rooms, systems that sometimes make children can make such a difference. But the way in which you did it, I think makes it's not a textbook like if I do this, tick, I've done my child-led play. If I do this, and you talked about that, and I was just thinking, this is it. It's much more than learning how to do it and passing a course or attending a course. So anyway, I'm talking too much. I'm going to pass the floor over to you.
Well, I think, child-led play is a term from your profession, not mine.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so when you suggested that, I kind of talk around that theme. For me, there is a kind of an older script.
yeah,
Where are you from and what are you here to do?
yeah.
Um, and so from an education standpoint, from my classroom, mathematics, who's in charge? Am I in charge?
Hmm.
Or do the children, the students, the younglings, whatever we want to call them at whatever age, do their present levels, do their knowledge, skills, abilities, do their sensory sensitivities, do all of these things, do they take precedent? Right.
Yeah,
So you mentioned the ecology of the room. They cannot learn if the ecology is off, if the relationship is off. And so part of my job as host, I guess, or hostess or teacher or whatever you want to say, is to create that soil that upholds what we're trying to accomplish and creates that environment where they can thrive. Um, so around the talk that I gave on Thursday, I thought about your question, and then I thought about your give me five, and I thought that was kind of a cheeky way to arrange things. And then, this morning in greetings, suggesting maybe we can do it like a distilled version of that for today.
yeah. I think that sounds really great. So give me five. What's your first
Right. So for the first one is kind of esoteric, but not attention as a legitimate source of knowledge. And
Mhm.
so when I listen to you talk about your work with Gestalt processors, what
Yeah,
strikes me is how much weight you give to where the child's attention already is,
yeah,
right? Like, you can see the bucket, but you cannot touch it, right? Why is their attention there, right? And that happens before anything gets called language. right? And I recognize that instantly from my life and from my own classroom, right? So if a student of mine is fixated on the corner of the page and she's doodling away or whatever, that's information. That's not nothing, right? So my job is not always to redirect, right? Let's go back and let's, talk about limits and derivatives and stuff, because that's what we're supposed to be doing in the lesson plan. For me, I want to notice what's already there, what's working from, I have a student who likes to draw kind of like Mayan, Mexican kind of mythological skulls, right? And so we enter into conversation about the geometry of that and how his culture were amazing mathematicians and astronomers and stuff, and that draws in that conversation. And
Mm,
so I notice his attention shifts when it goes from this mundane textbook and worksheet and stuff to now I'm recognizing who he is, where his people are from, bringing in that whole culture into the classroom. And not just legitimizing it, because that's not my role to say one is legitimate and one is not, but to
no,
say your family and your history and your ancestry, they're welcome here with you. Let's bring them into the
yeah,
conversation. So that's number one, that
yeah,
attention as that source of knowledge.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's where connection starts to grow. If you observe and you pay attention to where attention is, that's where that connection, you understand me, I understand you, starts to develop that first seedling. I sound like you have
Right.
just said that.
Last year, I wrote about a student within the context of certain things in trigonometry
Yeah,
class. And you have your lesson plans all ready to go for before the day starts. And then she has questions and she has demands. I want to know this, I don't care about that. And to be able to move on the fly and like, okay, I see your
yeah,
attention is elsewhere. This is where we are in the lesson plan. So let me very quickly um, adapt, right? We can talk about functions and transformation of functions, but we can talk about them in your interests of music and DJs and production and how your mix board works and all of that kind of stuff. I can do that at my age now and my skills with language that I wouldn't able to do it at 20 years old or whatever. But that is part of that attention. What is interesting this child and how can we
yeah.
bring it into the room?
Lovely. And what's the second one?
So the second one is that the room teaches as much as the lesson does, right? And I think we kind of started there with the ecology of the room.
Yeah.
So when a student walks into my classroom, there is lighting, there is pace, there is silence. Sometimes nothing gets said right away. What happens if they give the wrong answer? Right? Is it held gently or is it corrected fast? For me, that's important because,
Yeah.
whether, I'm in the classroom, you're in the clinic, it's the same kind of environment. The way I allow seating to happen, the way transitions function in my class, how I respond when a plan falls apart, halfway through the lesson. Am I upset? Am I cross with the student? Am I sarcastic and blaming them for everything that's gone awry and my perfectly crafted script? No, of course not, right? But they're reading me, and that's part of the instruction. And whether I mean it or not, obviously. So, I can have a brilliant lesson plan. And of course, all of my lesson plans are brilliant, of course.
Of course.
But but I think students learn when they're safe, and they're safe when they're held, and when we uphold them to
Yeah.
say you can't make a mistake, and that's why, like, coming out of your conference and writing that stuff, the speed of dark, the self-regulated strategy development. I'm very honest with students. When I see this on a test, I think, oh God, why do I have to see poetry from Charles Mackay again? And inside myself, I'm just retching and revolting. And
Yeah.
here's how I feel about it. And I can imagine you, as not Scottish, encountering this dreary Scottish poetry on a test and thinking, why me? Right. As I'm verbalizing this and I'm letting them know it's okay to hate Charles Mackay's poetry because it's dreadful. And that lets them know that they can push a little bit, they can question things, that they can drive it, right? And those norms in the room that we co-create,
Mm.
we let each other know there's no such thing really as a wrong answer. And I think I kind of demonstrate that in my writing, where I thought I was writing this, and a year later I come back and now I have 10,000 more words about it, and I still don't feel I'm complete about it. And that we're just all kind of a work in progress, right? And so that
Mm.
is part of the ecology of the room as well.
And I guess as a teacher, what you've also talked about is that um, safety, connection, but equality as well. The power dynamic is it's just not there. When I go into when I'm thinking about some schools, and I'm thinking now about this story that I read on Facebook by the occupational therapist, and it described her observation of a little one, a 6-year-old in a school, and the I won't go into great detail, but it was really about the antithesis of what you're talking about. It was I'm the teacher, I'm in charge, you will do this. There was no thinking about where's that child's attention. Um, how can I, make this room feel comfortable for this child? It was the absolute antithesis of that. And I just wish that lots of the children and young people that we work with, that we come across, had you as a teacher and all the things that you think about. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just such a difference, and what a difference it would make. I even read an article today, and it was just talking about in our press about there's too much send. Why are we saying there is these special educational needs when actually it's not that? It's just naughtiness. It's just bad behavior. And when you think, what, in 2026 we're talking about this? Really?
Right.
Wow. But I also know that's anyway, I'm not going to get too politically. It feels like puppeteering, and I will allow you to allow you. Maybe it's better to go on to number three.
For number three, it's about trust.
Yeah.
And trust gets built by being remembered, not just by having a kind therapist or a kind teacher, right? So at my school, there are norms that have been encouraged by administration, but one that I really kind of like, and that is teachers are encouraged to stand at the door and greet students as they come in,
Yeah.
right? And so part of my struggle in the first, say, fortnight of school, so about to happen, is learning those names,
Mm.
right? Because I don't have the whole of it yet. I don't know who they are in relation and stuff. And so it's very, very difficult to establish those names. And then for me, again, this is personal, this is not, institutional. Um, their name is very important to me, and I want to get it right. And for me, having their name right is a safety issue, right? I
Hmm.
know who you are, I know where you are in relation to everybody else, and so on. And I want them to feel comfortable in the room. If I if I call Frank Walter or something like that,
Yeah.
they're gonna feel like I don't really see them and stuff like that. And so that trust, I want to remember the whole experience of that first fortnight accurately. I
Mm.
want to know something about the student. Because of my role, I have a smaller group of students that I work with. So it's a bit easier than my colleagues who have like 5 times the amount of roster space that I do in the general education curriculum. But I can talk to parents. I can call them as I'm not overburdened by having
Mm.
250 students or whatever on my case. And so I can tease a little bit out about, what's important to them, how do they like to be addressed, and all of this kind of stuff. And to build
Mm.
that trust relationship, to know what I can say and what I cannot say, what's very important, in those things. And so I can carry that into how I hold that youngling across the whole school year. And I can
Yeah.
grow with them. Oh, you like this book, but now you don't like that book. You like this other thing, or you're really struggling with, that ADHD kind of memory space. So When it comes to the unit circle, we're not going to do memorization. When it comes to logarithms, we're not going to do memorization. We're going to play, right? We're gonna go from base 10 to base 60. We're going to do turns and quarter turns and 12th turns and all of these kinds of things. And we're going to make it very simple, but also very accurate. And so knowing that profile of each student, where I
Yeah.
can push and where I must let back a little bit, having that background knowledge of different systems and different ways of doing the same thing, being able to move from base 10 to base 60, etc., in trigonometry. And then letting them know that it's okay to be unfinished. You don't have to finish the worksheet today. You know, if you're going to
Mm.
demonstrate your knowledge of something, my district really goes all in on what used to be called mastery grading and now is called equity grading. But it is kind of a premise about nothing in life has these kind of learning deadlines except for schools,
Mm.
right? And so if you want, in your class on Thursday, you don't necessarily expect that everybody's going to get everything Thursday, 5 o'clock, and then off to the pub, right? That there's going to be some ongoing learning. And so if we have these learning targets, if it takes you 6 months to get there, fine. I want you to get there. I don't want you to get there by Thursday, right? And then also that once you get there, that there is some maintenance to that, and
Yeah.
I kind of explain it in terms of me being an athlete, that I was a champion shot putter because I did 500 turns a day for decades. And that, 10 years goes by, I haven't touched anything. I'm retired.
Mm.
My school asks me to be the track coach. And because I have that muscle memory and that whole of it, the
Yeah.
gestalt about throwing and everything and competing and stuff, I can step in and I can teach younglings. And they're trying to learn something very complicated, like the rotational spin. And like, well, I did it over decades. You can
Mm.
just step into it, and it's okay to sound silly and feel silly and do crazy things like that. And so we can leave it unfinished. We don't have to have that perfectionism dominating. And I think that is a huge issue for trust. I
Mm.
will love you if you make mistakes. I will love you
Yeah.
if you're doing great. I'm not just going to give
Yeah.
you the candy, because you did something. I'm not going to let you, access something that you like because you did something I like. That's not how I
Mm.
work at all. Right. And so I think a lot of my writing demonstrates that, in that it's a first draft.
Yeah.
Come back a year later with different language for the same experience. Now it's more complex, and then maybe a year later more complex than that. And I share that with them. Like, we're all a work in progress.
And I guess what is really sort of singing to me as you're saying that is also that it isn't just about, well, it is about the trust that you create, that those children and young people absolutely trust you, but you trust in that trust process. You believe it, you trust in allowing the children and young people to make the progress, to make the mistakes, to get there. You trust in that process of them getting from where they are now to whatever endpoint that might look like. And because you trust in it, it's authentic trust, if that makes sense. That's what I'm hearing as I'm listening to you, because sometimes we talk about, building connection, building trust, but are we also thinking about a smart target? Are we thinking about a percentage in an exam? Are we thinking about a GCSE, an A level, a degree, whatever it might be? Or are we really trusting in what you've just talked about?
Yes, well, thankfully we don't have A levels and O levels and stuff here, because I think we would be dismal. Oh my goodness. What it is, the standardized tests and stuff have gone away in California.
Mm.
There is no exit exam in high school in California. There are in some states,
Mm.
but we don't have those pressures. But I agree, to be able to be in my position and have that kind of longitudinal look at things, to sit a child down and said, I met you in year 8. We're here at the end of your secondary school experience. Look how far you've come.
Yeah,
Look what you can do now that you couldn't do then.
yeah.
right? Look at the conversations that you can have. Look at the topics that you can discuss. Look at not just from a productive standpoint of you can get this score on a test, but look at what you can do.
Yeah.
Look at what you've learned about the world, and look at what's next because of it. My school, I think, for those that want to go to college and not necessarily go straight into career, because we have a lot of those too. But for those that want to go to college, I think we have like an almost 100% acceptance rate for
Wow.
those that, they want to go and they get accepted.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's amazing. I think that's brilliant. I also think on the other side of it, I've had students where, why do we have to learn geometry, Dr. H? This is stupid. Like, okay, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, how are you going to make money? I hate those questions, but they're
Yeah. Yeah.
relevant, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, my father runs a construction business. I'm going to join his construction business. And I said, well, you're going to live in geometry, mate. That's it. I just remember I told you this.
Yeah.
I take that information and then now I have this, kind of script garden around geometry and construction so that I can
Yeah.
keep him part of that conversation. And that's kind of a good segue into number four about routines and scripts,
Yeah.
right? And those routines, especially with the younglings, we're as professionals, we're building those scripts with the younglings, whether we like it or whether we mean to or not. And
Yeah.
so, from this standpoint, scripts are not just language; they're emotion,
Yeah.
and it's, there's repetition. There is, I have a bell schedule. I have a time to open class. I had to take attendance and move from one thing to the next and so on. But I recognize that all of that begins well before that, especially for clinics. We're going to see Cathy, right?
Yeah.
And that begins at breakfast. And then
Yeah.
we're getting into the car and then we're singing our favorite song and then we're watching our favorite Bluey or whatever on the way there. And there are
Yeah.
all of these things that when you have a Gestalt processor or autistic Gestalt processor, this is just as important as what's
Yeah.
done in the clinic, right? To
Yeah. Yeah.
maintain the fidelity of that, the whole of it, the whole script, right? And so safety is built by predictability and the comfort of knowing that this is the way it should be done and this is the
Hmm.
way it will be done. And you can count on me as an appropriate adult, a responsible adult to take your scripts and uphold them and care for them and to honor them so that you can learn that your kind of participation, whatever it
Mm.
is is possible in my room, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of what I keep coming back to lately is that dharma. What is this routine actually upholding? And what
Yeah.
can I learn from it? And then how can I kind of integrate their whole gestalt, the whole experience from breakfast until they're gone? How can I get from that and then give back to that to foster their growth?
Yeah. I think that's something that, one of I think about a lot, and I guess it's things that I've learned as well along the way in terms of when I haven't upheld a routine, usually because of my own brain not being quite accurate. I feel it in the room. I feel that ecology in the room when I've got that, haven't there's something I've missed, there's something I've forgotten, there's something that I didn't take into consideration with this child or this young person in front of me. And um and then when I do recall what that might be, whether that might be some language that I've used, whether it might be an activity that I know they really like and I've perhaps put it in a different place or I've forgotten part of it, that becomes really, really apparent. And 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 as you say, it's that whole um what you've really made me think about, Jamie, when you talk about this in terms of like the routine, the script, is the run up and the aftermath of a session. Yeah, I'm in there in the moment with the child. I'm trying to think about where their attention is at. I'm trying to create trust. I'm trying to think about everything within the room, not just me and the child and the parent. I'm thinking about all of that. But have I always thought about what happened um, in the morning? Were they, that's been really kind of for me quite profound, really, in terms of thinking about the children that I see is the before and the after, not just when we're in the throes of life.
Right. Well, I think because I'm autistic, because a lot of gastroprocessors are autistic, there is the negative framing, the clinical framing, the
Yeah,
deficit framing. But
yeah,
Jamie,
yeah.
you're just being pedantic, right? I wake up at the same time every day. I have a routine for
Hmm.
when I'm going to school, Monday
Yeah.
through Friday. I have a time that I eat certain things, a time that I do certain things, and that if something pushes me off that routine,
Mm.
I kind of lose my place. I feel untethered and
Yeah,
I'll forget things.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes my mobile will stay at home, things like that, because my routine got interrupted. And people frame that as, being pedantic. That's an autistic deficit thing. But for me, it's kind of a fidelity to my script. Like this is
mm.
the whole of it for me. This is the whole routine of getting ready and going. And so I want to I want to feel safe in that. I want to honor that. And when I can, everything goes well.
Yeah,
And when something happens outside of that, then there are negative consequences that I must face
yeah.
and deal with, not just from a time management standpoint. And so, this is kind of me speaking from inside of that experience of, I don't think it's pedantry. I think it's ability.
Mm.
You know, it's my script. It makes me feel comfortable, it makes me feel safe. Why should I be shamed for having it?
Yeah,
And so that is kind of, I flip that in my classroom.
yeah,
Everybody has their scripts, and let's try
yeah,
to honor them.
yeah. Absolutely. So that brings us on to the fifth and final.
Fifth and final, yay. So the fifth and final is that this whole thing was never really about your clinic or my classroom,
No.
right? And you and I are not working in two different fields that happen to rhyme. We're asking the same questions inside of two different institutions, right? What does this uphold? So yours is in a clinic, mine's in school. You have your schedules. I have mine, and the bells drive me nuts. But underneath that is the same ethic, right?
Yeah.
The child and what they're doing, our observations, our interactions, that's knowledge, right? The room, the ecology of the room is never neutral,
No.
right? The trust that we're building with clients, students, colleagues, friends, all right? Part of that is being remembered accurately over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And every routine we repeat is teaching something, whether we intend it or not, right? And so the fifth theme really is this, is that the framework doesn't belong in speech therapy, it doesn't belong in education. It belongs in any relationship where one person has more institutional power than the other, right? And
Yeah.
has to decide every single day whether that power is going to uphold a person's sense of herself or quietly replace it with something more convenient for the adult in that room. That's
Mm.
number five.
That is very, very interesting. And I feel that that's going to really link into some of the conversations that I'm going to be having over the next couple of weeks in Give Me Five as well. And it's something that I think about a lot. I think about that um, when parents perhaps are bringing their children to see me and they've been told this, that, and the other about their child. Um, the child can't access speech and language therapy services until they've done a parenting course to that they have to do in order to uphold their position in the waiting queue for speech and language therapy, or they've got to do this in order to they've got to jump through this hoop. The child has to do this in order to access high tech AAC. And that's, feels like, and you're right. When you and I talk, it feels like a familiarity. And I guess we're both very conscious of what we uphold. And if I'm honest, sometimes I don't think I get it right. I think I get it wrong quite frequently. But in terms of, perhaps I didn't give enough thought to who holds this power in the room, this power in this meeting. If I'm in a school, wherever it might be, and that's something that I reflect on, and yeah, a lot. So
Yes.
thank
Well,
you.
when I get it wrong, I let the whole world know and I write 10 pieces on it. And that's like, okay, Jamie, you go upside. Don't do it that way again. Here's, 15 different pieces about, that particular error from, these different angles and stuff. And
Yeah,
so I guess in that I'm rather transparent about, my failings and blind spots and stuff. And so that's kind of the function of outside on St. Joe Residue, is that script garden is always being tended, right? I'm not perfect. I'm so far from it. And so here I'm leaving these little pebbles for myself. And then oftentimes something will come up and I'll jump into the archive and start, searching through it. Oh yeah, I've done 10, 70 pieces about this. And how, here's a new, fresh thing. It's not just me getting flooded and writing things, but I'm constantly referring back to these scripts because, again, the Dr. H persona and all of that kind of stuff, I still struggle mightily with language, and I still
yeah,
get overwhelmed, and I still find myself in situations where I thought I was prepared and I wasn't prepared at all.
mm,
And so for me, it's not content I create. It's an archive, it's a script garden, it's something that I can reference. And that,
yeah.
that other people find it helpful, or I mean, that to me is it's wow, okay. It makes me feel lots of different emotions. But it's not the primary thing. I'm not a TikToker, I'm not a content creator. I'm just a wee school teacher whose mighty struggles are public at this point.
And through that incredible humility, you also bring so much to so many people that relate and learn and reflect. It's just incredible. So thank you for all that you do. And I say that on my own behalf, but I know that many other people feel very, very similarly. So thank you. It's been a real pleasure today, as always.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words and for the opportunity to drift into your trademarked area of giving you five.
I don't think I'm quite trademarked yet. So anyway, Jamie, just let's recap. Give me five.
All right. So the first one is that attention is a legitimate source of knowledge, right? All of
Yeah,
this uh, non-gold standard chit chat, that's knowledge, right?
yeah,
And number two is that the room that you're in teaches as much as the lesson does.
yeah,
Number three is that we build trust by being remembered. We trust by being remembered,
yeah,
not just by being kind to each other. Number four is that routines are part of that script. They're part of the whole gestalt. And myself as teacher, I'm building it along with my students, whether I mean to or not. So I have to be mindful of that. And then kind of five is more of a meta theme, but it was, number five is it's not really about the clinic or the classroom. It's
no,
about life and relationships.
absolutely. Thank you so much. And I will see you very soon. No doubt this will be both being listened to on Gimme Five and Sunday mornings with Jamie and Cathy. So thank you so much and see
Oh
you
no,
soon.
thank you. It's been wonderful. And it was great popping into London for, a brief chat.
I can't tell you how much it made such a difference to everyone's thinking, learning, kind of reflections. It was just perfect. So until our next meeting, I will
Yes, until
say,
then.
yeah, bye for now.
All right then. Bye-bye. Cheers.